Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a super interesting topic, accounting and cash flow, your guys' favorite. If you didn't go to university for accounting or finance because you absolutely hate numbers, but you love money, then you'll love this module. But jokes aside, today it's going to be a very simple module, obviously talking about some very nitty gritty and tedious stuff that nobody likes, to be quite honest. But it's necessary. It's necessary as a business owner for you to understand this stuff, okay? So today's itinerary, we're going to be going over creating a legal entity, when to create a legal entity, the softwares to use for accounting, paying yourself, and monthly cash flow management, okay? So let's talk about legal entities, all right? So creating one. So everywhere in the world is different, okay? If you're watching this from Canada, I can speak to that because I basically, incorporated my business. We call it a corporation in Canada. I incorporated federally in Alberta, so I'm registered in my province and I'm registered in my country, okay? I might be actually, switching over my company and bringing it over to Dubai, which is, again, it's a little bit different here. They do free zone businesses and corporations as well too, but that's a different topic, okay? So in Canada, I was able to use a company called Owner to incorporate my business on a federal level, right? Now, Owner is an online-based business, so basically you can actually go to Owner. You can just type in basically www.owner.com. And you can basically incorporate your business from there if you live in Canada. I believe that some provinces don't allow Owner, even though they're very, very credible. And the cool thing about Owner is I remember that they were running some sort of promotion that if you utilized Owner, they would actually set you up with basically like RBC, who's their partner. And if you utilized RBC for banking, they would actually send you like a $300 check as well too. So I basically got incorporated for like $200, which is crazy because most people who get incorporated spend like $1,000 or $500, max. So yeah, it saves a little bit of money. So if you're in the US, you need to create an LLC. Obviously, follow up with an advisor, ask questions. You don't need to pay anyone to get information, okay? So just make sure if you just dial up your nearest accountant and just ask like, hey, how do I get incorporated? How do I start an LLC? Get some information from a credible source of, information. Okay. You can even Google search this based off of where you're located. Google will show you the right information and it'll just be able to steer you in the right direction. Okay. Now, past that, because of course, every single one of you is a different agency owner, a different location. I don't want to steer you the wrong way. Just make sure you're talking to somebody who has that credible information. Let's talk about when to actually create your legal entity. Okay. So again, everywhere in the world is different. So you'll need to research this more in depth to make sure you do it right. However, for the most part, I think this is for like 99% of people who are starting a business. All right. In Canada, I didn't incorporate until I was making about $5,000 a month because that to me showed that I actually have a business here that I need to incorporate and I need to start doing some tracking in terms of like expenses, profit, revenue, all these things so that I can show it at tax season. Okay. So when you start your agency, you do not need to incorporate. Okay. You can literally just get started with, your website, you have your social media accounts, and then you start your outreach and you land your first, your second, your third client. Okay. You don't need to worry about getting incorporated. Worry about this when you're making some good money that things start to get a little bit not messy, but you now need to start organizing your life to actually show that you have a business. Okay. So no need to start filing for corporate tax and all that nonsense when you have not made any money yet. Again, this is why I tell you, do not incorporate when you start a new agency. Okay. Start making some consistent money and then you can worry about setting up a legal entity. Make sure you keep the money you make in your business in a separate checking account within your personal bank account when you start. Okay. So if you haven't incorporated yet, you don't have your own business bank account. Like right now in Canada, I bank personally with TD Canada Trust, but my business is in RBC. Okay. So when I started, all of my money that I made personally and that I made through my agency was in my personal TD bank account. Okay. So you need to set up a new account within your personal bank account that basically is just going to house where clients pay you. That's where you're going to house all of your money. That's where you're going to take all of the revenue you're making, take out money for expenses and stuff like that. That way, at least you can download all the transactions and the statements. And then when it comes to tax season, you have it there. Okay. So like I said, this will help you stay organized and keep the money you make separate from everything else. And this will also help you easily identify what you've made just in case you start to, create a legal entity sooner than later. And you need to move funds over. You need to download those transactions, those statements, things like that. Okay. So softwares to consider. All right. So in North America, I know some big ones are QuickBooks, Zoho, and Xero. All options are solid and they're credible. Okay. QuickBooks is probably one of the biggest ones. They've been around for literally forever. So definitely recommend checking them out. Get a software right away when you start spending money and taking money. Okay. This is a big one. Unless you're someone that wants to, hand over your accountant a stack of papers with with highlighted stuff and all these things, it can be a little bit of a nightmare. Sometimes if you work with like an old timer accountant, they might not even care if you have like one of these softwares, but I can tell you right now, most accountants that are, living in this century are going to say like, we want you to work with QuickBooks. We want you to work with one of these things. Okay. So get a software right away. You need to track these expenses to claim them for tax season, regardless of if you own a legal entity or not. Okay, this is a really big one to know. So when I started my agency, again, I didn't incorporate for almost a year. Okay, because I had an agency name, but I was kind of like running a freelance business in that first year. To be completely honest, it was way out of whack. I mean, I'm sure you guys have heard my story, but before you start your legal entity, you want to make sure that you still are using this, because again, it enables you to actually track all of your expenses and things like that. Okay. So let's talk about paying yourself. All right. So identify what the smallest amount possible is, which you can pay yourself without getting taxed heavily. So in Canada, I believe off the top of my head, I know it's like a random number, but it's around like $12,000. If you make $12,000 a year, you actually don't get taxed on it. So I pay myself a monthly salary in my country. It's under 12K. I don't get taxed on it because I'm basically considered the poverty line. Okay. The only thing that I pay myself is dividends. That's what I typically get taxed on, because dividends are a little bit different there. Okay. Now it's all going to depend on where you live, what your tax systems are, what your tax rules are, things like that. So again, follow up with, your tax laws and your tax rules with your location. But again, this is a big one. Okay. So I actually don't even get taxed on my monthly salary. I basically just get taxed on my dividends that I actually pay out. Right. And then even in that sense, I have a financial advisor who like moves my money in a sense into like different accounts so that I can, have, tax credits and all these different things. Okay. That's again, this is why this module is so boring, because it's stuff that like, I hate talking about. It's so tedious, and I just rather like pay somebody to do it. So just understand that, like, have a good understanding of this stuff. But just the moment you can pay for someone to do this, just take that opportunity, okay? Now, don't get carried away, as it's better to keep your money in your business in the most cases, because there are less tax implications, okay? So again, you need to look into this based on where you're located. So I actually keep majority of my money in my business. I pay myself very little from my company. Maybe down the road when I move to somewhere like Dubai where the tax implications aren't as high, I can actually transfer a lot of that money into a personal account, stuff like that, okay? So cash flow management, okay? So track your P&L inside our Google Sheet, which we have provided, okay? So most accounting softwares will also track this for you. I know that QuickBooks does, but this document is just a simple overview that you can use for personal use, okay? So the plug and play is in this module. You can click the link. Once you get to that link, you can click file, and in the top left corner, you can click make a copy, and then it's yours forever, okay? So action steps. Get yourself a accounting software. This is very important. Duplicate and begin using our tracking sheet plug and play. And then identify when could be the right time for you to turn your business into a legal entity. Okay. Again, don't overthink this. It's very simple to do. It's very straightforward. Now that you have those action steps, I actually want to walk you guys through this accounting spreadsheet. Okay. So this is basically what it looks like. Hopefully you guys can see this. As you can see, it's very, very simple to use. So to basically create this on your own, all you need to do is you click the link. It'll bring you here. You go to file, you go here, click make a copy. It's going to duplicate a copy for you guys. And now you have your Google spreadsheet. Okay. But this is basically what it looks like. All right. So all you do, you touch nothing here. All you do is you basically start to plug in all of your numbers. And again, you can edit this based off of the numbers and how your business pricing structure is and everything like that. So we've kind of set it up in a few different ways so that it can, basically apply to every single one of you. So you have your items here, which is where you list your clients, their retainers, the setup fees, the ROAS percentage that you're charging, what those ROAS fees actually equate to at the end of the month when you're billing, what the revenue share is, what the revenue share equates to in dollars, and then of course, their renewal dates, things like that, okay? And then in here, if you slide over, you can actually start to list all your softwares, the amounts it costs, the staff, their names, the amounts that you pay them, and then other things that you cover, okay? I typically put all of my marketing, my advertising fees in here, as well as, paying creators for UGC content and stuff like that. And over here, again, you don't really need to touch anything here except for the opening balance and closing balance, but everything here will adjust, okay? So highly recommend using this. It is a lifesaver, even if it's, it doesn't necessarily need to be down to a penny, but it'll just give you an overview of where you're at, in your accounting and in your P&L, okay? And then as you can see here, as you scroll to the bottom, you have your year your year summary, your months for January, February, March, all these different things, okay? So then as you go, you can just fill out the whole month, all right? So ladies and gentlemen, to bring things back to square one, your action steps, these are the 3 that you need to follow. And then of course, if you guys want to, converse about accounting and P&L and revenue and all these fun topics. Dive into the community and start talking about things. I know these are usually higher level conversations when you start actually making like really good money. You know, when you start making about 50K a month is when you need to start actually talking about like how to move your money around and how to kind of like set yourself up for tax implications and stuff like that. Okay. So without further ado, without rambling any further, I hope you guys enjoyed this module. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day and go through these action steps, utilize the Google plug and play, and we will see you guys in the next module. Cheers.